Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Visit Purdy Insurance on Market Street in Sunbury or visit online at purdyinsurance.com. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is the Steve Jones Show on a Monday afternoon. News Radio 1070 WKOK. Matt Catrillo here with you. Steve Jones will soon be there from the Sunbury Motors Studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. And today's show, like every Monday show, is brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance. Go to purdyinsurance.com or visit them at their office on Market Street in Sunbury. And what a great weekend for college basketball. That's pretty much all I watched this weekend, including Penn State's big 83-77 win in front of the sellout crowd at the BJC with the win over Minnesota. Isaiah Brockington, as you just heard from Inside Penn State Athletics with Steve, a great game for him. And also Lamar Stevens, once again, just an unbelievable game. Made a lot of big shots again in the second half when Minnesota started coming back. Penn State kind of punched back and was able to pull away. And once again, you're seeing growth out of this team. That's probably been my biggest takeaway through this 5-game win streak now for the Nittany Lions, is the way that they're able to make big shots, get big stops, make key free throws down the stretch, all of those things that come together to help you win big games that you need to do at this time of the year. And Penn State's starting to do that consistently, and the confidence to do that consistently in those games, and those moments in those games, is starting to come out pretty strong for this team. Yeah. Still have a lot to prove, Steve, and number 13 now in the polls, too, so it was a good weekend for Penn State men's basketball, I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, they got challenged in the second half, and again, now this doesn't enter into the game on Saturday, but I'll bring it up anyway. For all those times where there's, say, 3 minutes to go and the team's up 12, or 14 or whatever, the fans are like, put the subs in. That's why you don't put the subs in. Because that three-point shot, suddenly out of nowhere, somebody starts rattling down three-point shots left and right. Now, that doesn't, that's not what happened in the waning minutes on Saturday. But that's why coaches are so reluctant, because of that shot to do it. I mean, and Carr got hot, and just when I thought Carr was really playing tired, because he took a free throw and he barely hit the front of the rim, like, ooh, he is gassed, because he's been playing 40 minutes a game lately, and but then to his credit, he hit a shot, then he hit another one, then he hit another one. You're like, holy cow.
Oturu was relentless in the second half, too, after he was a non-factor in the first half.
He's a good player, man.
Yeah, he is. I like his game a lot.
That is, this is a guy, Oturu. Yeah, I know he and Lamar got into a dust-up in the line out at Minneapolis. Well, this time that's not what happened. There was great respect shown on both sides at the end. But Oturu is the kind of guy that really loves the game of basketball. He'll text Richard Pitino, and he'll text him, and he'll say, he said, how many points would have Pete Maravich had there been a three-point line? He studies other players because he loves the game that much. That's the kind of guy he is, Oturu. And I really like his game. And this is what happened. You talk about natural recruiting areas. For goodness sakes, he's from Woodbury, just outside of Minneapolis. The kind of recruiting area they have is a little bit different than the recruiting area Penn State has to deal with. So it's, but the problem that Minnesota has, because Penn State's been down this road before, they've got two really, really good players, but they've got okay around them. Kalsher can be really good, but he's for the most part been okay this season. Willis was coming off a great performance against Wisconsin with 21. He hit five threes in that game at 21 points. But what's the problem? Again, being the fact that he's okay is the fact that he can have a game like Wisconsin, and then you can contain him the next time out. And they're not a deep team. They have a couple guys sitting out that are transfers, and Richard does a good job of coaching this team. Richard is a very, very good coach in his own right. Forget his last name. The guy's a very good coach. Okay? That's why you don't sit there and go, oh, well, he's only there because he's Rick Pitino's son. Nah, he can coach in his own right. He's very, very good. But the problem they have is they've got two guys that are just terrific and okay around them and not enough depth. They just don't have enough depth. And that's why Carr is playing 38 minutes a game, why Arturo's playing 37 minutes a game. Penn State has depth, and that's what allowed Penn State to withstand the fact that their second leading scorer, Myreon Jones, 14 points a game, can't play in the game. He was sick. I mean, Myreon played the game too, and we talked about this on Wednesday's show. I talked about how Myreon played the game sick, and we thought it was remarkable the way he played that game. At least I thought it was remarkable the way he played that game. On Tuesday night, he had 20 points. He was 6 of 8 in threes. He was tremendous. I think he missed the free throw because the tank was getting very, very low. But he did a heck of a job in that game, but there was no practice Wednesday. As we pointed out, that he didn't practice Thursday, he didn't practice Friday, and of course when he wasn't a shoot around the other day, I was like, okay, that ought to do it. Now, my understanding is he's going to practice today, and it sounds like they're going to let him travel. Well, if they're going to let him travel, that's a really good sign. You want to know why? He's in a plane around other players in a contained area. That tells me they think he's okay now. You're not going to put him in there. Oh, he's still really sick, so, we're going to put him around the other players and make them sick. But they're 13 right now. And going to Purdue. And they're right now in second place in the Big Ten, tie with Illinois. And Lamar Stevens is the Lute Olson National Player of the Week. And he is the Big Ten Player of the Week. Which is, I'm sure he thinks is nice. But all he cares about is the number 19 right now. He wants to get that 19th win. The crowd was great on Saturday, Matt Catrillo Day, that they came out in droves for a good reason. By the way, let me give you the most impressive number of the weekend, 507. You know what the number 507 represents? The number of cancer survivors at the Jordan Center yesterday for the Lady Lion basketball game against Illinois as part of the Pink Zone game.
Boom.
They had 507 cancer survivors there. And again, that game makes an impact on research. It makes an impact on awareness. It makes an impact. And I think that's just, to me, it's terrific. I know Illinois won the game by 4, but there were 507 cancer survivors there. The Penn State wrestling team goes into Madison, the 4th-ranked team in the country. Beat them, 29-10 or some number like that. Then they go to Minnesota, boom, 31-10. The Penn State wrestling team was terrific this weekend. And now you've got the day-night doubleheader coming up in the Jordan Center on Saturday. At noon, the men's basketball team will take on Northwestern, and at 7:30, the wrestling team takes on Ohio State. Now that is some twin bill. That's Saturday. And the wrestling team, I mean, and I say this with all due respect because he is a terrific wrestler and a former national champion, Mark Hall. They're one Mark Hall victory away from beating Iowa. He only lost 19-17. He wins that match, which, look, you feel like most times, like 8, 9 times out of 10, he wins that. And they put together a terrific performance, and they're ranked number 2. XFL got off to a start yesterday. I liked it. For the most part, I liked it. And Matt played great, McGloin. But for the most part, I liked it. I thought it was entertaining. And then basketball tomorrow night at Purdue at 6:30 in West Lafayette. Now, are we carrying the game, or what are we doing here? Or does...
I'm hoping that we'll be in for some time during the second half, because we do have Shikellamy wrestling tomorrow at 7. So I think we may have a shot to get into the second half.
Okay. All right. Well, that game's tomorrow night. Purdue's won 3 in a row. They went to Northwestern. They were in deep trouble, got out of trouble, won the game late. Then they ran Iowa out of the building on Wednesday, ran them out 104-68. And then they went to Indiana. They were Bob Knight returned. And beat Indiana by a score of 74-62, something like that. But it was good that Bob Knight got back. It was good. I think his son Patrick and his wife Karen had a lot to do with it. I know, look, I know he's not doing well. I've talked to enough people who know him or know somebody connected to him that I already knew he wasn't doing well. And you could tell he wasn't quite doing well, but you know what? You know how good it was for that fan base just to see him standing there and to see him lead them in a call of defense and wave his hand to them. It gave that fan base closure. Gave him closure. Whatever you think of Bob Knight, from afar, the Indiana fans up close love him. Whenever they would do intros on the scoreboard and his image comes up on the screen, it would come a couple, 3 times up on the screen. Every single time the place would go crazy, all the time. Well, finally he went back and to stand on that floor with Isaiah Thomas and some of the others. It gave the fan base there the closure they've been aching for. So, all right. We will come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Purdy Insurance. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle with a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you. The other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years. Great to have you with us. The suit just popped into the master control room and confirmed that they will pick up the Penn State game in progress with 2 minutes to go. No? Earlier than that?
We'll shoot for that.
I can't stand that guy. Get rid of him. Today's show brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. All right, great to have you with us on the show today. BenJonesStateCollege.com. In the next half hour, we'll talk some basketball. Penn State is ranked 13th in both polls. As of today, heading to West Lafayette Mackey Arena for tomorrow night's game at 6:30. Purdue's playing really well of late. Penn State currently tied with Illinois for second, a game back of Maryland in the race. Of course, Penn State does have the tiebreaker over Maryland for future reference, because the only time they played this year, Penn State won. That's the tiebreaker. And they're not going to play again in the regular season. So that's where that stands. And the sellout. Let's start with this on the sellout Saturday. Number one, above all, I hope that people that went to the game on Saturday had a great time. I hope that they were treated really well from the time they parked the car and got into the lot, into the building, and then all the way through the whole process and leaving. Okay? I think it's the most important part, because you want to make sure your fan base always has a great experience. Now, winning the game certainly contributes to the great experience, but, of course, those who are running parking lots and concessions and things like that, they can't control the winning or losing, but they can control your experience otherwise. And I hope everybody that went had a great experience. And the winning part, yeah, the fans were a big part in that, huge part. And Richard Pitino talked about community buy-in, and he's so right about that. This is a different market than others within the Big Ten. Richard Pitino does have to contend with in Minneapolis the Vikings, the Timberwolves, the Wild. Not so much, obviously, not the Twins, of course. But he has to contend with that. They have competition, but a far greater population to draw from. That's all with doesn't take long to get there. For Penn State, Saturday is a really important day, and the combination of really good team, ranked, winning streak, and a Saturday contributed to a sellout crowd. So that's the, and they made a big difference. Believe me, with all due respect, other coaches will tell you this, and I've talked about this before. Let's be honest here. And Penn State hasn't had great teams over the years, but it also has not been a tough place to play. Well, the Ohio State game and this game, that Jordan Center was a really tough place for the opponent to play. Nearly 100 years, Purdy Insurance has been your locally owned, family-operated source for insurance products. With a staff of over 20 and partnerships with some of the industry's most trusted companies, Purdy has the experience and resources to get the job done. Whether you need personal, home, and auto, or complex business insurance solutions, Purdy will help you navigate through the process. Call today at 570-286-5855. Or better yet, stop in their Sunbury office to see what Purdy Insurance can do for you.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in beautiful downtown Hummel's Wharf. Today's show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Purdy's have served this valley for decades, finding their customers best insurance, covered, auto, home, life, business, best price. And they're constantly updating policies. And if there's ever a claim, wow, you watch them go to work for you. They're really terrific people, just really great people who happen to be great professionals. Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. XFL got underway over the weekend. Matt already has bought season tickets to the New York Guardians games.
Actually, I did not watch a single snap.
Well, I watched the Guardians game. I wanted to watch Matt play yesterday.
I did see he played well. I was happy for him.
Yeah, he did play well. Played very well yesterday. And I thought the level of play that I watched for the most part, I was like, this is pretty good. It's a completely different feeling for me watching the XFL as opposed to watching the Alliance. The Alliance was so defensively oriented that it just felt like the defenses were way ahead of the offenses in the Alliance. At least I felt like I was watching some zip and some zing to the game in the XFL over the weekend. All right, let's bring in Ben Jones, statecollege.com. Ben, welcome back. It is great to have you with us on the show today.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me, and I will take the Michigan State job if nobody else will.
And believe me, there are 13 other head coaches of the Big Ten that want to see you take that job. All right, so hey, go. Hey, Ben, you go, guy. Anything of note from Patrick Chambers' press conference today?
I mean, I think big picture-wise, the thing that's different right now is, everyone's just in a really good mood, and it's hard to blame them. They're playing winning basketball. They're 13th in the nation. They pretty much, for all intents and purposes, have their tournament bid locked up. So I think it's just, the news, not so much. They're waiting to find out if Myreon Jones is going to be healthy enough to play tomorrow night. He's going to be at practice. I'm assuming he's going to travel. They're going to pump him full of fluids and try and get him healthy. But other than that, this is the middle of February, and Penn State basketball is very happy, and there have been a lot of Februaries that have been a slog in the past.
Well, they're going to let him travel and put him on a plane in close quarters around other players. I think that tells you something. Okay? I think there's a message there. If they're going to put him on a plane in close quarters around other players, he probably is well enough to do something more than that. They did have to play, though, Saturday without him. What did it tell you about this team, playing at home, though, but what did it tell you about them that for once the formula wasn't quite the same and they still did what they did?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a repeat of a lot of what we've seen this year, which is they have not always shot it well. They have not always rebounded well. They've not always done well from the free throw line. But they have, over these past couple games, over these past 6 games, have found a way to get it done because they've been good at something else instead. And I think, when they don't have MJ, that's a big consistency and efficiency piece that they lose. And instead you get, Lamar Stevens steps up. Isaiah Brockington kind of had that moment there that reminded you a little bit of how he played against Iowa. The guys just made those plays. And I think, it is one thing certainly when everyone is not doing something well and you're still able to win, and something different when you have to take an entire piece out. But I think it's really a continuation of what we've learned about this team, which is they have wiggle room when it comes to the margin of error. They have wiggle room when it comes to the ability to not play perfect, just play well enough. And I think that was just another iteration of it, maybe to a certain extent, even if Minnesota, has its own issues, one of the more impressive ways they've done it, simply because he's been so good the past couple games.
And Lamar Stevens, obviously, with the accolades he's received, which I doubt he really cares about. He just wants to win. But what are your star has to be your star. What are you seeing in Penn State's star?
Yeah, I think he's really kind of grabbing the reins here. I said a lot to people earlier in the season that the big difference about this Penn State team was Lamar Stevens is the star on it, but he doesn't have to be the star every night. And I think, the past couple games, and this past week in particular, we've seen him kind of, he says he's letting the game just come to him, but he seems a lot more assertive in a way that he understands the moment they are in and he understands his capabilities. I think obviously he still trusts his teammates and all of that, but I think he has this sort of, that senior season drive where you go, this is for real, this is really happening. And, to Lamar's credit, he has never really been the most efficient scorer in terms of points per shot and things like that, but I think he has found a way to get to his spots. He's hit those mid-range, those long twos. He's gotten to the free throw line, and unlike against Indiana, he was great at the line, this past weekend. So I think, he's just in that moment, and he understands what he can do and what he needs this team to do. Because ultimately, as much as they want to spread the ball around, as much as they want everybody to be involved, and as much as everyone's been involved, you make runs in February and March and in the tournament on the backs of your stars, and Lamar Stevens, is certainly one of many, but he is the brightest one on that roster.
Yeah, and against Indiana, he was sick that night, so that may be part of the reason why it did not quite fall the way he hoped it would. Which then I want to get to John Harrar. Obviously Mike Watkins is a great athlete, and Mike has been playing well. I mean, let's get that straight. Mike has been playing well, but Saturday wasn't one of those days. What have you seen from John Harrar, and what's your opinion of how he's played for them?
Yeah, I think he's been great, especially the past 2 or 3 weeks or so. I think we saw it when they won the NIT and Mike was out with that injury, that John has that gear in him where he can be, he is not as athletic and he's probably more limited in ways that Mike is not. But I would say that John, in terms of a physical guy, because for as good as Mike is, he does get banged around inside a little bit by some of these bigger bigs. I think John has done a good job being that strong presence inside. After those 2 early fouls, he managed to pretty much stay out of foul trouble the rest of the game. And I think he really, despite the fact that, you get 32 points put up on you, you feel like you haven't done a good job. I think he forced enough missed shots, enough turnovers, enough rebounds that they needed, because a guy like Otero is going to get his on a night like that when they're going to go to him that much. I think John really, when he is playing like that, Penn State is a different team because they don't have to have Mike Watkins be his best. They don't have to have Mike Watkins stay out of foul trouble. They'd certainly like it, but he gives them a much more viable second option in the post like that when he's playing that well and with that much confidence. We talked to him today, and that was really the key. It's just, the trust that his teammates and the coaches have in him, and the belief that he has himself. And I think any player probably has ebbs and flows throughout the course of a season where they believe in themselves more or less, and your ability to navigate those is important. And I think you're seeing John right now, especially, in the thick of things in important moments in this season, he has stepped up. He has, to his credit, despite it being one of his biggest weaknesses, has hit some important free throws. He has done a lot of good things, and, maybe he's not as flashy as Mike, but he's certainly just as important.
We've seen the traditional point guard in Cassius Winston, who's just fabulous. Marcus Carr put on a terrific second-half performance on Saturday. But a guy that's not the traditional point guard, at least in today's game, is Jamari Wheeler. When you watch him, Ben, what are we seeing with him where in his role he's affecting the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we talked a lot about, last year coming into this season about who was going to be Josh Reeves. And no one is really going to be a Josh Reeves except for Josh Reeves. But I think Jamari's ability on the defensive side of the ball to be as tenacious, as quick as he is important. And I think he really is kind of the embodiment of the speed and tempo and pace that they would, ideally like to play with on offense. But he's not a scorer in the traditional sense that you might expect from your point guard. I do think that he has made some timely shots over the course of this season. He's found his moments to drive to the basket. I actually thought his drive and layup this past weekend was one of his better plays this year, just because he kind of sensed where the floor was at and what they needed, and he got it done. But I think he's just the little engine that could, just in terms of the fire that he plays with, the speed that he has. And, he had a couple games earlier in the year where he turned it over probably more than he would have liked to, but I think he's been really secure with the ball. And ultimately, if you're going to quarterback an offense, do they want you to score? That's helpful, but I think if you're able to get the ball to people and do it without giving it to the other team, that's important. And I think it's really a good example of a guy who understands his role, understands what he's supposed to do, and is going out there and trying to do it to the best of his ability. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what makes good teams, is that not everybody has to score, but if everybody knows what their job is and they go out and do it well, I think a guy like Jamari Wheeler is obviously an asset in that area.
Your thoughts on Purdue? They've won 3 in a row. They were able to rally at Northwestern, run out Iowa, and then on the road play terrific against Indiana. What's your thought on them?
Yeah, if you said a month ago that Penn State was going to have to go and win at Purdue, there's obviously nothing about that is ever easy, especially with Penn State's historical record at Mackey. But, now they seem to be finding, their stroke a little bit. They play, to their credit, they shoot the 3 very well at home. They play well at home. Mackey is not a place that really anybody, it's a lot like Wisconsin, it's a lot like Michigan or Michigan State. It's just not a place that you go and win a lot. So I think it'll be interesting. I think from the Big Ten race perspective, it's a game that Penn State wants. From the postseason perspective, it's a game that Penn State can probably afford to lose. So I think that the fact that they have played so well on the road, Penn State gives them a lot of confidence going in there. But, there's never a good time to play Purdue. This is probably the worst time to play Purdue because they're playing their best basketball of the year, and you never want to hit a team in that moment. But, end of the day, if Penn State thinks it's a Sweet 16 team, which I think they have the horses and the firepower in the right part of the bracket to do that, you've got to find ways to win those games. So I'm looking forward to it, but I think it's definitely going to be a big challenge because Purdue is finding itself right at the right moment.
Last night, Northwestern, again, another spot where they put themselves in a spot that Chris Collins is hopeful, and then they didn't get it done. But it was at Rutgers. What does that tell us about the Big Ten night in and night out?
Yeah, I think we've seen it all year long that you can't go anywhere and expect to win. You can hardly expect to win at home. It just statistically has worked in your favor. There are no easy nights. I think, being on the Penn State side of things, having watched them for all these years, we know that even though Penn State has not won tons and tons of games, it hasn't been in this position. I would be hard-pressed to say that Penn State has been an easy out over the last couple of years. They have played very competitively pretty much every single night. So I think you look at Northwestern as a similar kind of team in the sense that they're going to give you a fight when they're able. They're going to be right there. But, the other side of that, it reminds me a little bit of Penn State, too, which is, you get right there on the edge and you have to find a way to win, and you haven't quite been able to do it. Sometimes the difference between a good season and a bad season is just a couple buckets, and Northwestern's coming out on the wrong side of that, and, they're down there at the bottom of the Big Ten. And the fact that they're able to do that against a Rutgers team that is, certainly as competitive as anybody else in the Big Ten says a lot about just the overall parity that we've got right now.
Ben, a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks for having me, Steve.
Ben Jones, StateCollege.com. Back with more in a moment. Brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK. You should see the suit in his office when this bumper music plays. He starts doing the moonwalk and the whole thing. It's really great. Now, it looks like it's in slow motion, but that is as quickly as he can go. Oh, I hate that guy. When's the next Shikellamy basketball game, anyway?
Tonight, actually. At
Tonight?
Southern Columbia, and I'm calling the game myself over on the TV side.
Oh, are you really? So
I
what
am.
time's that game?
7:30 tonight. KO's on air at 7:06, I believe, and then we're on air on
7:06,
SEC V8 at 7:15.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
All
I'm
right.
going down to Catawissa after we're done here.
That's great. So how good is Southern Columbia in basketball? I've heard of the football team. I heard they're
Yes,
decent at football.
not so great. Both
What?
teams are kind of struggling this year, so
Oh.
this is the final regular season game for both teams, and then the Heartland Athletic Conference playoffs start later this week.
Okay. Huh. And so it's Suit and Chief versus you tonight.
Correct.
Wow. What a tough choice. I like like to hear the chief. I'd like to hear you. I'd like to hear the chief. I'd like to hear you. I'm trying to think what. Well, there's a tiebreaker in there, isn't there? Who are you working with?
I'm working with, his name is John Joseph. He's very good. He's a teacher in the Central Columbia School District, but he used to be a girls' soccer coach, but he knows basketball very well, too.
Who's the chief working with?
The guy in the corner office, as you like to say.
Ooh, boy, that makes my decision easy. All right, so, I can't stand him. I've got awards, you got nothing. See what the Jaguars are going to do? They're going to play 2 games in London this year.
That's not surprising.
I'm sorry. I don't see this. I don't see it.
Oh, me neither. I've always thought the whole London thing with the NFL was stupid.
I just don't see this. I would think you would have to devise a schedule where outside of the bye week, where you'd have to play back-to-back games at home, then back-to-back games on the road. And you'd have to have a place to train here in the States to do this.
My guess is...
Can't be flying back and forth.
Right, yeah. My guess is they'll probably put one with their bye week, one London game with their bye week, and the other game with probably whatever Thursday night game they get, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about if they permanently had a franchise in London.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I'm not talking about this.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if they had a permanent team in London. I mean, yeah, because the travel part's the crusher. Michigan State football job, not exactly on a roll. Matt Campbell, Iowa State, no. Pat Narduzzi, Pitt, no. Mel Tucker, Colorado, no. Luke Fickell, Cincinnati, no. And then the latest one, according to Adam Rittenberg, our good friend Adam Rittenberg, says that Brent Pry at Penn State has told them no. And will remain as the defensive coordinator at Penn State. So now who are the candidates at Michigan State? And I was standing right there when Mark D'Antonio, the one time he got emotional in that press conference on Tuesday last week, and I was standing right there when he said, "Oh, this is a top job for anybody." I looked over at Dick Girardi and said, "Who's he kidding?" Okay? So again, Matt Campbell, Pat Narduzzi, Mel Tucker, Luke Fickell, and more importantly among all of them, Brent Pry telling them no, according to Adam Rittenberg. So, what's left? Well, there is Jim McElwain at Central Michigan. A distinct possibility is Justin Wilcox at Cal, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, and now, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you the wild card. Brett Bielema. Bielema is currently the outside linebacking coach with the New York Giants. He knows the Big Ten, and he knows how to be a head coach. And I think Brett Bielema could be a possibility for Michigan State. So, once again, the big one is that Brent Pry has said he's going to, according to Adam Rittenberg, has said he's going to stay at Penn State. And, of course, for Penn State, that's huge. Pry is an outstanding DC. Great coach.